Okay, we are live. This is May the 4th, 2025. And we're going to pick up on some of the things we were talking about in the Discord server. Let me go ahead and open up the chats. Okay, looks like we're good to go. I had to switch back to Restream. We're no longer on StreamYard. I might stick with it, but the StreamYard bill is a little higher than I was prepared to pay. We're not really earning enough here as far as sales and stuff, and I've been trying to switch from a donation-based model to just selling stuff, books and the like. And so at this point, we're kind of in a gray area, stripping things down, and I'm considering um, reframing things, kind of putting things into a different format altogether as we move into the summer. So not sure where things are going, but I do want to maintain a consistent schedule, at least once a day, even if it means 20-minute live streaming in my car. But we'll build back up to the point where we're taking phone calls and doing the long forms. But I just wanted to touch base. And yeah, just a minute ago, I was trying to get onto the other platform. I want to get past all the tech where we're constantly dealing with platforms failing, glitches, and all that. I want to, like I said, streamline everything. I'd like to stream off my phone, but I might need a new phone for that because this one tends to overheat. If I speak into my phone for 10 minutes straight, it tends to overheat. And also, a lot of people have been having issues with Gilded, and I have issues with Gilded as well. You have to join something called Roblox, which I thought was for pets, but Roblox is some kind of platform you have to join to use Gilded, and I don't like making people jump through hoops. I don't jump through hoops. I would consider going back to Discord, but I would need some dedicated and merciless moderators because we can't have the chemtrail crowd and the simulation theorists running everything into the ground. And then anti-vaxxers, of course, the Nazis and all the rest. I mean, Discord has a lot of baggage. And I don't know if it's curable, but it might be a necessary evil. Okay, so let's see what we have here in my minds.com. The big topic of the day is this thing with the Shiloh versus Carmelo. And I've been speaking a lot about this 1619 versus 1776 dialectic. In fact, I put that on one of our PSYOP trading cards, bifurcated PSYWAR 1619 versus 1776. And if you don't know what that means, essentially the PSYWAR politically is divided along this spectrum, this political horseshoe, and the woke side is epitomized by this concept of 1619 being America's starting point. The woke right is epitomized by 1776, that being the starting point for what exemplifies and defines America. So you have two different versions of America. One of them is more diverse, inclusive, and the other one is very nationalist and seems to be pushing the idea that it needs to retain its character versus foreign incursions, invasion, etc. So this dialectic has been present in all of the major psyops, the race war psyops. It's tied into all of it. It's intrinsic to the bigger psychological war that we're watching, experiencing. And now we have this. Carmelo, we're talking about Anthony Carmelo, stabs Austin Metclaf to death. And the left wing sides with the stabber. They're like, well, it was, he was protecting himself from systemic racism or something. So we had to kill the teenager. And then he's given $520,000 in donations to protect him from the right wing, to keep him safe because he's out on bail. Now, a lot of people on the right, obviously were somewhat incensed that people were willing to throw money at a murderer just based on tribalism, which is what it really comes down to. And when this happened, I said, okay, this is likely a part of the buildup towards a summer of riots. It's a manufactured outrage, and then there becomes this kind of a this Trayvon Martinization of Austin Metclaf happens, where now the right wants to turn him into a martyr and do a White Lives Matter version of BLM, because it was Trayvon Martin killed by George Zimmerman that kicked off BLM. And I see this attempt to make him into a martyr, and I'm like, okay, well, this is the typical talking heads, the influencers on the far right getting behind this. So what's going on? And sure enough, one of the individuals who was stirring the pot the most is a January 6er. So Jake Lang, who really got behind putting this political agenda on top of this killing, happens to be someone who was arrested for January 6th. In other words, a Fed, like Ray Epps or Baked Alaska or any other of the big names that you see associated with January 6th. The whole thing was a hoax. It was a psyop. Therefore, Jake Lang being involved in the Anthony Carmelo thing is questionable at best. And then we compare this to the concurrent movie Sinners, which has many of the same themes, Klan, systemic racism, etc. And it has the feature of twins, and one twin dying bleeding in the arms of the other, which is one of the defining scenes in the Austin Metclaf death scenario, where his brother holds him as he dies. So all of this led me to think, okay, this is very hoaxy. Well, then a few days ago, I see this video going viral, and it's a mother on a playground who you don't see it on camera, right? But she apparently called a 5-year-old kid a racial slur for rifling through her diaper bag. Well, she was confronted by an individual, and she didn't back down. She doubled down. In fact, she repeated the slur many times and gave the person a middle finger. And this went viral because, of course, she called a 5-year-old a slur, and she's not apologizing for it. So she went viral by people who wanted to destroy her life. So she creates her own GoFundMe account and says, protect me and my family. I'm in a dire situation. Well, the internet responded to this in the bifurcated way, just like they did with Austin Metclaf and Anthony Carmelo, where the Daniel Penny side, the right side, the Austin Metclaf side support her. And the other side wants her kids taken away from her. But anyway, as of right now, she has raised $523,000 to be protected from the left. Anthony Carmelo has raised $520 to be protected by the right. So they've almost made the same amount of money, dollar for dollar. It's almost the same, and for the same reason, to be protected from the other side. So this is a perfect example of the alt woke and the woke, or the left-right political horseshoe being demonstrated in its extremes, and it's picture perfect. It's like a movie. So looking deeper into this case, I'm thinking, okay, this is questionable for a few reasons. One of the things I find questionable about this Shiloh character is the guy that was filming her, the one who was trying to call her out, has a criminal background that was exposed. Apparently, he's a predator. And so the question is, well, why is this guy out in a playground? And a lot of people are bringing this up. They're saying, this is interesting. Why do we have this is, and there's a lot of people commenting on this. Why do we have people angry at the woman using a racial slur than the fact that there's a child predator, a convicted one, on the playground who's recording her? So none of this stuff makes sense to me. And I thought, well, this is an indicator that the guy is probably a psyop actor, because one of the consistent things we see with these various actors on the world stage, crisis actors, is oftentimes these are people who've made deals. And we looked into him, and he made a deal. He didn't serve time for the literal assault of like a 16-year-old. I mean, terrible stuff. So this is the guy calling out the single mother. So again, I'm finding that to be very questionable. And again, here's the actual report on it. Update: a sexual assault case against Rochester man dismissed. Dismissal by prosecuting. In fact, Leo Pirate posted this. He said, "You're vindicated again because I said the guy probably made a deal and got himself a crisis actor gig." And if you look here, how was this person able to get his charge dismissed? So again, the right is like, okay, well, this guy is an immigrant and he committed this crime, and then he's on the playground. So there's a lot of red flags here. So my take on it as of right now is that these are both hoaxes. If the one on the right is a hoax, with Jake Lang and the right wing getting behind it and turning it into a narrative they can all jump on and monetize, then why would this other one be any different? And the same people are responding to it in the same ways. Now, I want to bring up something else. This is 100% related because you've heard it here for the longest time. I've been talking about how we do exist in a spectrum. They've created this political horseshoe, and that the conspiracy theorist far right has approximated the woke left. And I call it critical race theory versus critical Jew theory. And I've been talking about this dialectic, 1619, 1776, and their worldview and how they're framed. Well, others are noticing. And here's a great contrast and comparison between Candace Owens and Robin DiAngelo side by side. And this has been labeled woke right and woke left. And what you'll see here, what you'll hear are identical talking points, but you just replace the scapegoat and you get these identical. One believes that the ultimate oppressor is white and whiteness, and the other side believes that the oppression is the result of Jewishness and Jews. And each side believes that they are unique, that they are persecuted by the other side. So this is not both sideism. This is not moral equivalence. I'm talking about the structure of the Psywar itself and how all of these narratives are contrived and designed in a way to divide society along predictable lines. And people are 100% predictable when it comes to this stuff. Now, let me go ahead and show you what I mean here. I'll play this side by side. By the way, let me go through your comments. All right, Marcus, John Francis, Let's Go, X322, Lord Laney, Mazel, Deprogram Truther. Lord Laney says, the Hendrix ordeal, and this is that Shiloh girl, where the lady calls the kid the N-word, made me think of a dialectical Jimi Hendrix thing where white people didn't like black rock and roll, dialectical division. Interesting. Yeah, and I mentioned that movie, the Sinners. And the thing about Sinners is that it is all about the whites being, well, vampires. That's kind of an oversimplification, but not really. This is like a demonization that is being employed in the movie. And of course, it's hard to disagree with it if you look at the way that they are characterized in the movie. And I don't think it's disconnected from everything else because they use the movies to create the context in which we interpret the fake news and the psychological operations. And that is a process that is a combination of marketing, propaganda, conditioning, mind control as usual. John Francis says, not looking good for whites. Well, that's one of the things that struck me too as questionable is, you have the crowdfunding account and they're making money for this woman who made a racial slur against potentially an autistic child. So that's not even defensible. Like, I can understand being angry that the child's going through the diaper bag, but you go to the parents. But she went to the child, which is just unconscionable. And then the comments in support of her were unbelievable, as far as they opened the floodgates for now GoFundMe is platforming comments that you would only see on 4chan and now on X. But since when do they allow explicitly racist commentary in their comment section? No platform allows that, but suddenly they're allowing it. And this has gone on for days where, she's raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I'm seeing comments that are, a lot of dog whistles, coded stuff, dollar amounts, 1488. And so, hold on a second here. Somebody says there's no audio. Am I quiet again? Sound? But anyway, GoFundMe eventually blocked the comments. And so I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? It's like they're allowing the airing out of all these generally opinions that are behind this, that are kept out of the public sight, that people wouldn't attach themselves to. Why do they just suddenly allow the floodgates to open? Okay, the audio is fine. Look, if you're going to make comments about audio, that's a very questionable thing. Just saying. And we have to be careful about trolls and such clowns. So anyway, moving on. Let me play this clip here. This is woke left and woke right.
I now understand racism as a system, as a deeply embedded system, a system that our country was founded on.
Sigmund Freud was the kingdom of Galicia. His family's from, he's a Galician Jew. And they come over to America, and kind of the story that we're told is, oh, everyone just came with the clothes in their back and then like made it big in Hollywood or made it big in modern psychology. And I'm like, no, America was a young country. We were very like susceptible to all of these things.
And every institution reinforces this system.
Frankists were behind the French Revolution. The Frankists were behind the Russian Revolution.
So Candace Owens says Frankist. It just means Jew. They use code. Alex Jones says globalist. And this is all code, but it all points to the same thing, that the world is under the spell or the control of this particular minority, and everybody is under their control. And we are therefore oppressed because of them. Each side says this, but they blame different bad guys. And I bring this up quite a bit. How can Bill Gates be a savior and a villain? If you're on the left, he's your savior. If you're on the right, he's going to block the sun and he's going to kill you. Elon Musk, if you're on the right, he saved free speech. He's your savior. He's going to save us from depopulation. But if you're on the left, he's an evil CEO, fascist, who's taken over the government and he needs to be stopped. So again, what is it? Which is it? Villain or savior? Can you be both? Can we claim that both of these are true? No, it's a major contradiction. So neither of their stances are true. Same goes for this. Can we argue that the world is under the spell of a particular minority, and then at the same time, it's under the spell of this other minority, and each minority claims the other is oppressing them? So are the racist whites oppressing the Jews, or the Jews oppressing the racist whites? Are the non-whites of the world oppressed by whites, or the whites being oppressed by them? And this is back and forth. It's ongoing and it never ends because it's the perpetual war. But again, woke left and woke right, these are the same thing. So if you fall for this stuff, this is why I don't take the anti-Israel people seriously, the Jew hunter people seriously, the internet Nazi types, the 4chan types. I don't take them seriously because you're woke to me. You're a shrill wokeist, but you're on the other side.
Okay, it was the Frankists and believed in this, who orchestrated wanting to bring down Christian empires. And it is the Frankists who are bringing down America.
Refusing to grapple with how race shapes virtually everything is what keeps us divided.
So again, whiteness or Jewishness, which one controls the world? It can't be both. But if you pay attention and you're watching both sides, they each make identical claims. And that's a major contradiction. But you wouldn't see the contradiction if you're in the box. And this is just scratching the surface, but I'm going to play a few more moments of this video just so you can see the
I think this
contrast.
is why we don't get to open the Epstein files. You don't get to open the JFK files. Other countries too. You investigate anything. I mean, I'm investigating Brigitte Macron, and Israeli blackmail comes up in Morocco. Also, the MAGA movement. It sort of feels like they're doing the bare minimum for Americans and what we actually put them in office for, and then doing the absolute maximum for like Bibi Netanyahu's entire agenda. But once again, we're left feeling like this is just a slave colony.
And these white employees took great umbrage at having to have diversity training, and they were incredibly hostile.
Now, one other point too. The reason why Candace Owens is the face of these opinions is because she's a black woman. They could not have these opinions espoused by a white male because it would be too overt. She's espousing viewpoints that only make sense coming from a white nationalist, white preservationist, sexist. And she epitomizes everything they're against, being that she's a woman who made her life in the career field first And now she's a latecomer to the family thing, a latecomer to Christianity. It's all performative. But again, even the Daily Wire, they use her to espouse talking points that, if said from a white male, would be called racist and sexist. And it's not like she's got all kinds of internalized misogyny or any of that. No, this is a parody of extremism. She's putting out talking points specifically meant to incite conversations along certain lines.
Incredibly resistant, right? It's so scripted, right? It's so predictable what they're going to say and how they're going to respond.
I cannot stand the people that sound like bots, the spineless cowards, and I'm calling out all of you men. Anybody who has a check mark and also has a penis and has not said anything about Israel protecting pedophiles or has said the statement like, our friend.
Anyway, Graham says, I saw Sinners. It's totally pushing the left-right divide. In my opinion, it looks like it's justifying violence for people that are being oppressed. Now, as for what is being oppressed. Okay, I'm glad you brought this out. This particular point out about the movie Sinners, because right before I watched Sinners, I said this is taking place in a broader context. So if you look at the big media ecosystem, and you have Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson talking about how they fear there's about to be a psyop, a false flag. And this was just a couple weeks ago. Tucker Carlson said he's making a, quote, prediction. And he said his prediction is that there's going to be an anti-racist false flag, meaning, and he pointed out the Patriot Front. The Patriot Front is like the Klan today. So he insinuated that someone from BLM is going to shoot up the Patriot Front. That's what Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones were both predicting. Knowing who they are, what their roles are, what does it mean when they predict something? And they also say false flag. So they're not saying it's going to be faked. They're saying it's going to go down for real. Jones did the same thing with 9/11. They're constantly foreshadowing. They use the alt media talking heads to foreshadow psyops so they can mislabel them as false flags, as de facto, as therefore real, which they're not. So when I went to go see Sinners, I had this in mind. And at the end of Sinners, the protagonist, the hero of the story, shoots up, mows down a bunch of Klansmen. And this is a victory for the good guys. So here you have Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones talking about some kind of false flag going after the Klan or after the Patriot Front. And in the movie at the same time, and this is the movie that reflects Austin Metclaf because it has the theme of the twins, the stabbing, and the racial overtones. Yeah, it in fact ends with a mass murder. Nicholas Pitt says, I never see any real Nazis on the right, just actual Nazis on the left pointing at Nazis on the right. I would argue that the Nick Fuentes, America First, embody everything that we think of when we say Nazis. We shouldn't play with definitions. Just stick to what they are. And the orthodoxy on the far right, from Candace Owens to Nick Fuentes on down, is not just anti-Israel. It's not just against Zionism. No, if you look at their memes, they're explicitly racist and nasty and trashy. If you look at their memes. So no, they actually do believe this stuff. It is accurate to call Nick Fuentes a Nazi. Now, they get mad at it, but who cares? What am I supposed to call him? What are we supposed to refer to these individuals? And speaking of Nick Fuentes, I just watched Black Klansman. Black Klansman by Spike Lee. And in Black Klansman, it has David Duke as one of the main characters. And David Duke in this movie looks just like Nick Fuentes. It's a younger David Duke, and he's got a Nick Fuentes mustache. And then at some point, they're having a Klans meeting, and they all start chanting, America first, America first. I mean, they literally appropriated his entire persona for that role. Now, I'm not defending the left, but to pretend like the far right, that the conspiracy theorist far right isn't led down the path that puts them behind Hitler is silly. I mean, obviously, that's what they're all about. You can't say the Hitler fan club aren't a bunch of Nazis, and you don't like the word Nazi. I'm sorry if that offends you, but it's my free speech. If you have a better word for it, let me know. I could say Nazi in quotes, but I'm not saying it to be ironic. I'm saying these are people who believe in the idea that all the races in the world are being used against the whites by Jews through immigration to eradicate them, white genocide stuff. If you fall for that stuff, that's what you are. You know, I'm sorry, but that's just, you have to stick with words. Words should mean something. What is a Nazi? I mean, what does it mean today? It's just a description for people on the far side of the political spectrum who are opposite woke. But instead of believing that whites control the world, they believe Jews control the world. So I think it's an accurate term. Again, I see them all the time. I interact with them. We lost a Discord server with 5 years of research because of internet Nazis. These are all boxes that you voluntarily put yourselves in. You know, it's like a very culty thing. All right, let me continue here. I'm scrolling through my notes. It's been a few days. Now, this is interesting that this is something that just came up. RFK Jr. was talking about, hold on a second here. It's rendering. RFK Jr. was talking about simulations, that there were 22 simulations that led to 2020. He says, quote, I've been able to find 22 of those pandemics. Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates play key roles in them and practicing a coup d'etat against American democracy. So this is fascinating because we talk about drills and psyops all the time. And here's RFK saying that those drills were used to set the stage for a coup d'etat of American democracy. But he's pointing fingers at Bill Gates and Fauci. So what are we looking at here with this particular statement? It seems to me a sort of a guardrail. Like, yes, there were drills, and yes, they surreptitiously used these drills to advance an agenda, but he's still pointing fingers at Bill Gates and Dr. Fauci, which is the misdirection. But the truth of it is that, yeah, essentially it was a drill. All right, let's continue. Lord Laney says, even the opposition to the controlled opposition is controlled. Metascript is an accurate description. Yeah, absolutely. It's all tightly controlled. Candace Owens is rich, says Ollie Goering. How else could she have her show? Boring and stale talking points so she can catch stragglers and keep the normies in the plantation. Well, Candace Owens is also a deep fake. She's pretending to be censored. Like, she was on Daily Wire, and then she spoke out against Israel, and then she gets kicked off. Of course, you know, Ben Shapiro's platform. And Ben Shapiro is very, you know, vehemently pro-Israel. Nobody was happier about 10/7 than Ben Shapiro. When we heard the story about the 40 dead babies, Ben Shapiro was the loudest to repeat this stuff. You know, he was like standing on top of a pyramid of dead baby heads, grandstanding. And I remember at the time commenting on this thinking, this is fake, but nobody wants it to be realer than this guy because it gives them, you know, they want the blood, they want the martyrs on their side. And Candace Owens wasn't on his side at the time and she got kicked off, but this is all performative. Performative censorship. Oh, look at me. I'm speaking so much truth that I'm being censored. Now I'm street level. Now you can trust me. I'm one of you. And people fell for it. And I think it's ironic, though, that you have the white nationalist neo-Nazi types who are following a black woman. I mean, these are all sexist, racist individuals. And these things are belief clusters. This is why I find it detestable when I don't participate in this stuff. Because you can't just take, oh, I'm going to go with this opinion. Like, yeah, I kind of do think that this particular group controls the world. Well, to take that perspective is to also adopt a cluster of beliefs associated with it. You know, the people who will make snide comments about Jews also hate blacks and women, but they never talk about that because there's more blowback. So they're very cowardly about their opinions, and there's a lot of dog whistling. And I don't respect dog whistlers. If you have an opinion and you can't say it overtly, go home. You know, what's the point? But yeah, Candace Owens is a total parody of extremism, doesn't believe anything she says. I don't even believe she ever did. I think all of her opinions are bought and paid for and have been from the very beginning. And her husband was the guy. This is another thing here too. She's married to the CEO of Parler. Now, if you remember Parler, it was a Twitter alternative leading up to January 6th. And it's where a lot of the January 6th organization happened. And at the time when Parler was popular, they were asking for your driver's license. And doing my research, I had to join the platform, so I gave them my driver's license, which was like, okay, sure, here's my ID. And Parler begins growing, and it looks like it might be the right-wing alternative to Twitter. This is before Musk bought it. And then Apple pulls its servers, so they tank the whole thing. And it just stood out to me as likely a huge honeypot, if anything. Just a big honeypot operation. They find out who's interested in an insurrection, who believes this about the deep state, etc. They just caught everybody. But leading up to the destruction of Parler, and again, Candace Owens' husband's the CEO of it, leading up to that, you had this racist shooter going to various massage parlors in Atlanta, killing people. Now, if you remember that story, he was referred to as the Parler shooter. So the Parler shooter, the racist, sexist Parler shooter killing immigrants, massage therapists, was like in the news. So you see this like this Parler racist killer as the Parler website is being rug pulled. It was a huge op, is what I'm saying. And then after this, she joins Kanye West with the White Lives Matter. So White Lives Matter, think about this, White Lives Matter with Ye, who's the black skinhead. And what is she? Candace Owens is a black skinhead. She's a black Klanswoman. If you listen to her opinions and what she's really espousing, just like Ye, they're black skinheads. They're black Klansmen. So the White Lives Matter makes perfect sense. And here we are with Metclaf and Jake Lang, a January 6er, trying to turn him into a Trayvon Martin to kick off a White Lives Matter. This is all pure provocation. Marcel says, May the 4th be with you. Hey, is it today Elon Musk's child's birthday? I remember something about May the 4th be with you. And there's something else. I think, let me see what I can find. There was something about this May the 4th. Happy birthday to my little son, X, May 4th. So his son was born on May 4th. And there's something else about May 4th that I think was notable. Was it the actor that played Chewbacca died or something? There was something related to this. I'll see if I can find it. Anyway, a bunch of Star Wars stuff. Somebody should look into the significance of May the 4th. But yeah, Elon Musk's child born on that day. Certainly not scripted. All right, moving on. Nicholas Pitt says, remember that crypto that required a retinal scan? No, but that's probably where we're headed. All right, moving on here. We're talking about the psyop of the day, which is the Metclaf thing, and how that the Anthony Carmelo and his money, and how that is all translated into this support for the racist mother on the playground. Ironically, even though all the white racists are giving her a bunch of money, the far right purists are calling her out as a Jew because of her name. You know, you can't win with these people. All right, let's continue. I'm looking at my Twitter feed. Candace Owens being an apologist for Dr. Joseph Mengele. Like, look, I mean, these are the opinions of someone who doesn't care about her career. This is someone who's just throwing bombs, and that's because that is her career. It is insane. Then we have this. Donald Trump joked about how he would like to be the new pope. Now, I already have a pope. It's Elon Musk. I don't know why Klaus Schwab couldn't just take over. He just stepped down from the WEF. Why couldn't he take over? And again, speaking of twins, we were talking about twins quite a bit here. And the twin, the pairing of the psyops is kind of interesting right now with this Shiloh woman and the Carmelo making the identical amount of money. But we were talking about twins, and on Easter, the Pope dies at 88, and then the World Economic Forum head steps down at 88, and they look like twins. We were discussing this, and this is all in the context of the twin getting stabbed, the movie where Sinners, where twins are the main characters. And by the way, the actor Michael B. Johnson isn't really a twin. He plays his own twin. And I suspect Metclaf doesn't exist. Just side note. But now, President Trump jokes about wanting to be Pope. And sure enough, he retweets an image of himself as Pope. And a lot of Catholics are offended by this. I've seen on Twitter. Some people are offended by it because some people still believe in the Pope and they take this stuff seriously. And on the right, the conspiracy theorists generally see the Pope as evil. He's like no different than Klaus Schwab. That's why I think it's ironic that they step down the same day, because I think that Klaus Schwab is kind of a Pope to the godless, atheistic paradigm, World Economic Forum, which is all about various God constructs like climate change and Gaia. But the Pope is more like the old world views representative of the World Economic Forum's head, the guy's the head of this major institution, and their eschatology, of course, is God and God's wrath versus the Gaia's wrath, but they're parallels. So for them to step down the same day, it makes a lot of sense. But anyway, here is Trump retweeting himself as Pope. Look how AI has changed things. Our memes are so much better. Think back when Trump first got in, it was animated GIFs where Trump's body slamming people in WWE and their faces are like a crop and drop of CNN's logo. And that was considered offensive, and they doxed the guy who made that meme. Do you all remember that meme where Trump was wrestling various media organizations? And it just it was a 2017 Trump body slammed CNN in viral tweet. And then CNN was so mad about this that they found the Reddit user. Reddit user Whole Solo shared a GIF of Trump pummeling a wrestler with CNN's logo on his face. CNN blackmail, how Trump's wrestling GIF sparked a debate about CNN and doxing. And they doxed him in a very unethical way, using what's called a DMCA request, claiming copyright infringement, which gave them the right to know who it is so they could serve them papers. I've used this. I used to use this to dox people on YouTube when it was possible, but they caught up to it. But this used to be the standard. This used to be the thing. Oh, look, Trump with Trump's face on a wrestler, body slamming a wrestler with CNN's logo. So it's just interesting to look how far we've come in terms of our graphics, the memes, and I mean, these gangster rap videos with world leaders, just unbelievable. Lasers Go Pew Pew says trumpet is an instrument to be played. Do you remember Trump Pence? Everyone was like, oh, it's trumpets. And it's the trumpet of the angels who are going to call forth the end of the world. Yeah, the names all do speak to this. We are talking about world stage, like Shakespearean literature at points where, yeah, the names do in fact have a great deal of significance. Someone had said the name Donald means world ruler. And recently, he kind of, I think, embodied that. He's even here kind of joking about being the Pope. Okay, let's see what else we have here. A Maine female high school teacher is under investigation by federal authorities after calling on the Secret Service to assassinate President Trump. Now, I don't know if this is fake or not. It's believable. Like, even though I talk about the political horseshoe and the left and the right being identical in many ways, it is true that the far left is unhinged. This is why you have to have a Candace Owens paid to say that crazy stuff, because nobody in their right mind would say that stuff. But on the left, there are plenty of people who are capable of embodying the worst of their side without having to be paid to do so. The death threats, the destruction of cyber trucks, yeah, that's all legitimate. That's all real leftist behavior. Look at this post by Colin Wright. The woke right is mirroring the woke left tendency to glorify martyrs and immoral degenerates based on shared racial identity. So the Shiloh character is being held up as a hero, but what is she really? Well, let's just judge her for a moment. Okay, we don't know if she's a single mom, but I think that's the presumption here. That's one thing that the right wing is against: single moms. Then she's got tattoos all up and down her hands. Her whole body is tattooed. Far right embracing the trad. She's not a trad wife. Why are they standing behind her if she represents everything they're against? And then digging deeper, she's got drunk driving on her record. She's been a drunk driver. So her record's not even clean. She's covered in tattoos, and she's presumably a single mom who's shouting racial epithets at a child. So putting that together, this is not your trad wife, paragon of moral virtue. She's kind of trashy. And yet, because of shared racial identity, they're throwing money at her. Breaking, Shiloh Hendricks has raised more money than Carmelo. And then the money for Carmelo, of course, that's somewhat detestable. He murdered somebody. And now, presumption of innocence. But why would you bring a knife to a track meet? And is it self-defense if you could have ran out of the tent? Why would your response be, let me pull out a knife and stab this guy? So we don't have all the details on this to judge the case, justify why he would need support to get away from any kind of blowback. And people were saying, well, you guys gave money to Kyle Rittenhouse. All kinds of bad moral equivalences being made here. But in both instances, you're seeing the worst elements in each side getting tribal on very superficial things. So we talked about the one who started it. The person who filmed the entire incident happened to be a pedo on parole who is dismissed his charges for, it's a bad story. He chased down a foster daughter who escaped. And so the fact that he's even free and he's on a playground is questionable. And that makes me think 100% that this individual is a psyop actor, that he was given a deal. Michelle K says the tattoos will wash off when she gets her next role. Yeah, exactly. Ooh, Till, good call. And I appreciate the support. Till says, Tim, can we get an auto hoax card with Lynn yelling grift off of it? Yes, I will make another psyop trading card. The last one I did is bifurcated Psywar 1776 versus 1619, which is a very important frame to understand everything. Marcel has brought in 5 titanium wrenches, all spray painted blue. Scott Rankin, Portal Complex, Mimsy Schwimsy, Rocco Calzone, Daniel Morris have all received the coveted blue wrench. Okay, moving on. I'm going through my Twitter feed. William Tinsdale, remembered for his translation of the Bible into English. For this, the Catholic Church killed him. He was tried for heresy, choked, impaled, and burned on a stake, 1536. I think we should strive to be like William Tyndale, because right now we are translating the Bible into English in the sense that the mainstream media is the world state church. The media is the Bible of the day. It's the worldview shaper. It's the worldview monopoly that represents how the world should look to you as defined by the power elite. And by calling out the fake news, By deconstructing it, we're translating it into the Vulgate, into the common tongue. That was the problem here. You had the illiterates are able to now read the stuff. They didn't need the priest to tell them what to think about it. Same dynamic here, where the priesthood, the media, is telling you what to think about the world as they translate it to you. And I'm saying, no, they're lying to you. And here's how you can tell. Here's how you can understand it for yourself. So we are translating the aspect of media that's meant to be hidden behind security clearances into a way that the common news consumer can understand it. And for this, we're not choked, impaled, and burned at the stake, but we're just not acknowledged. Censored at times, marginalized more likely. Ollie Goering says, grift off it, +5 attack points, -3 charisma. Laser says, they want us to fight each other. I refuse, but the dummies will. They waited their whole lives. It brings them purpose. Yeah, well, it's lowest common denominator agitprop. And I'm a conscientious objector to the Psywar. I'm not going to get into the mud. What is it? Was it George Bernard Shaw? Never wrestle with a pig because you both get muddy and the pig likes it. I'm not going into the mud. Nicholas says, after 10 years of working, my boss hired a racist that accused everyone of being racist. I was the closest friend he had, but when he started accusing somebody, well, it's a vile thing to accuse somebody of. If they're not, But there are proud racists today. They were full on display supporting this Shiloh Hendricks. In fact, they're giving people a justification for it. You know what I see flooding the intertubes right now are videos of black on white violence and then people cheerleading the idea that there needs to be blowback. Like, I'm seeing a lot of incitement, and it's being allowed to happen. That's my point. And I would say the movie Sinners is incitement. And I mentioned I just watched Spike Lee's Black Klansman because I want to get an idea of where things are going. And I believe Spike Lee directed the Charlottesville riots. I believe he directed the George Floyd psyop. If you remember, Charlottesville is where Nick Fuentes got his start. Nick Fuentes got his "they will not replace us" meme out there. Jews will not replace us, replacement theory. It all begins at Charlottesville. And Spike Lee's Black Klansman referenced that directly when the Klans meeting had David Duke looking. And this is what's interesting about it, too. In this movie I'm talking about, Black Klansman, David Duke had this big mustache, and he's saying America first, America first. At the time that movie came out, which was like 5 years ago, Nick Fuentes didn't have a mustache yet. He didn't look like the David Duke in the movie yet, and he wasn't espousing those talking points yet. Not that blatant. Till says, how about a blue wrench card with the names on the wrench of everyone who donates at least $50? Great way to fill the think tank. Hey, that's a good idea. Yeah, let's go ahead and put that into action. I like that. So take a look here. Dissident West made this comment. He says, it couldn't be more obvious what's happening right now is a proxy race war. Carmelo Anthony is being rewarded for what he did, and this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Look at the comments of Shiloh's Give, Send, Go. For example, $20, his name was Austin Metclaf. But a proxy race war is how it's being described. Okay, moving on. Alex Jones says that he's received, this is probably, anybody here not, if you're not hungry, get ready for tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow. Maybe it's the 6th. James O'Keefe is about to drop a massive nothing burger. I mean, maybe it's going to be a something burger, but I doubt it. But what he's been hyping up is the idea that he's not going to kill himself. Very dramatic. You might not know who he is. James O'Keefe he was from Project Veritas, And Project Veritas is one of these undercover gumshoe journalist types who expose corruption in high places, but they're actually fake. He got his start by dressing up as a pimp and his girlfriend as a hoe, and they went to various offices where they were getting funds from Acorn, Obama's. I guess it was his plan to get more investment into minority communities or something. But anyway, James O'Keefe, dressed as a pimp, claimed he wanted to start importing young Salvadorian girls and to run brothels funded by taxpayers, and they gave him the paperwork. So he brought down Acorn. That's kind of where he got his start. But these individuals, Project Veritas, have always just been exposing scandals that don't expose the real fakery behind anything. So it's just world stage drama. But anyway, recently he's been saying that he's going to drop some information that could get him killed. So he told Alex Jones about it, and Alex Jones said, "This is dangerous. I'm giving this information as a dead man's switch. So if the people set to release it get killed, then I will release it. Pray for James O'Keefe."
And I also need to talk to my good current and former FBI source.
So there you have it. There's some big information coming soon from James O'Keefe, who claims that he's not going to kill himself. Again, I'm just expecting it to be a nothing burger, but just heads up, in a couple of days, there might be something. But I don't think so. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully it's a plot twist, but I doubt it. And it's not like they're going to expose anything meaningful. What could they possibly expose that means anything if it's not calling out the intrinsic fakery of the mass media itself? It won't. Okay, let's see. Laser say, I looked up the FBI statistics. Black, overwhelmingly unalive black. We're still the number one unalivers. Yeah, you don't hear about this. I mean, I see many examples of violence, gun violence, that the media doesn't care about. They only care if it's a white kid with a bowl cut who has his dad's right-wing politics, who shoots up a classroom. That's when they care. That's the threat that they hype up. And it's not even a real threat. They don't care about the real violence, obviously. And that's another thing, too. The people who believe in school shootings are in a dream world. Like, if you want to know what real violence, real death looks like, what real victims look like, what shocked onlookers look like, go on X. Watch some real shootings happening. It's nothing like you see on the news. What you see on the news is so sanitized, where the people are at the podiums with the police talking about the victims. It's all somber and very scripted. But real life isn't like that. And we have so many examples that if you can't tell real from fake in 2025, then you're just dreaming. I mean, you're a zombie, essentially. You're in a trance, and that's fine. Ignorance is bliss. Stress levels are much lower, I imagine. The Rochester police are actively looking into Shiloh Hendricks, and the local NAACP are calling for charges. So I've seen people calling for violence against her, which doesn't look good for that side. Like, oh, if she said it in front of me, I would have taken her out. So there's violence being expressed, violent intent. And then there are people saying her child should be taken away from her. And then, and none of the people who are going after her are commenting on the fact that the guy that was putting her on camera had literally gone to jail for what he did to a 16-year-old. Total psychopath, sicko, pervert. But no, let's go after the mother who used a bad word. Now, I don't endorse using that kind of language, especially against children. There's no excusing it. So she's not really looking good on my side. But my point here is that none of them look good. But you see that they make these moral equivalences where they don't care about right or wrong. What they care about is their tribe. The tribalism is what we're seeing on both sides. But the NAACP wanted to see her charged with a hate crime. Shiloh was the location of one of the bloodiest battles in the Civil War, by the way. Her name is Shiloh Hendricks. This is pointed out by Anna Nicole Wordsmith. Anna Nicole Wordsmith is one of the best X accounts if you want to look for metascript clues. I don't believe that Anna Nicole Smith is a strict, auto hoaxer in our sense. I don't know what her opinions are on real or fake, but she goes right for the story, the narrative, the subtext. A lot of great metascript decodes can be found at the account of Anna Nicole Wordsmith, and she put this out. Shiloh was a location of one of the bloodiest battles in the Civil War. It also happens to be a biblical location and the early religious capital of Israel, a nation that has been in constant conflict since its inception. And here you have race incident in Rochester involving slurs against little boy goes viral. Alleged offender has raised $100,000 to relocate. A Rochester woman's racist remarks have gone viral, and a crowdfunding campaign started by her in the aftermath has shocked community leaders. And here you have an image of Shiloh next to the Civil War and then the first capital of Israel. So what do we have here? Civil War. And so the Civil War has been a theme for the last couple of years. You had that movie Civil War that came out last year. And it was produced by the guy who wrote 28 Days Later about, mind viruses, rage viruses spread through media. So you can kind of see how it connects. This is a media-driven phenomenon. A little clip of video started all this. And Jordan Peele pointed out that his movie Nope was inspired by the spectacle of the George Floyd killing, because that video changed the trajectory of the entire summer for the world. And it's the power of that little video, that mind virus that it created, that spread. And this is a similar example of this phenomenon. I mentioned this last week. The story's gone viral. AI is trying to control your mind straight out of Black Mirror. Scientists deployed bots to psychologically manipulate people on Reddit. Huge scandal. A betrayal of Reddit users. University in Zurich had a bunch of bots deployed to change people's opinions. One of the bots that I looked into was a Black person who was against Black Lives Matter, convincing people who are pro Black Lives Matter to go against it. And these are bots. These are maybe even AI agents. I don't know if you want to call them bots because that's too simple. But these are chat bots, I guess I'm going to call them for now, but these are literally changing minds. And what they said is that the AI is 6 times more persuasive than real people. And this has me thinking about the role of controlled opposition shills and agents. And I've encountered many of them. You know who you are. There are people out there who are tasked with controlling public opinion. Look at the Jarens of the world. Various operatives in place to keep a demographic under the thumb of Big Brother. Don't let them talk about this. Don't let them see this, but show them this so they trust you. Limited hangouts is what we're talking about. Limited hangout operations are simply when you have one agent in a crowd that steers the crowd. And this is an ongoing thing. It's a facet of mass media, like fake grassroots, astroturfing. Well, how is this any different? But now they're automating it. It's going to be far more effective. And these bots can be nuanced. They can be targeting individuals based on, like, this guy has this opinion about this event. Let's go after him. They used to try that with me. I had many people trying to persuade me out of my opinions. I had one person try to convince me they worked for HARP and that chemtrails were real. And I'm like, who is paying this person? Who is paying these people to defend lies? Well, the purveyors of the lies. It's the damage control. John Francis says the system is normalizing, justifying irrational violence towards whites. Well, okay, that's an interesting point here. You can kind of see this, like the concept of white guilt, for example, and this idea that you can have collective guilt, which I think is fallacious. I mean, for example, unless you can prove to me that reincarnation is real, can you really tell me that person A is responsible for what their ancestors did and person B is justified in hating person A? No, you can't. That's assuming that the person has a continuity with the past lives or people in the past that resembled them and passed down the genes. It doesn't quite make sense. Because what if we don't reincarnate intra-racially? What if we switch? What if each life you come back the opposite sex and a different race? So I'm just saying that it doesn't seem rational for me to hold people to these collective, the idea of collective guilt, like you're guilty by association. But you're right. That they are deliberately injecting our society with the idea that yes, you can in fact judge an individual by their group. But leading up to the death of Jordan Neely in the subway, there was a ton of propaganda where people were hyper focusing on subway violence, but it was coming from the right. Right wingers were saying, get out of the cities. The code was get out. Top down, Jack Posobiec on down, they were all saying get out. Get out of the cities, go rural. See, rural versus urban, another dialectic. Quarantine against the other side. Well, they were saying get out of the cities because the subway violence. And look, and they're sharing all kinds of clips of people on subways being attacked. Now, at the end of this, months and months and months of being inundated with the stuff, then you have Daniel Penny killing Jordan Neely on camera, strangling him on a subway to protect people. Well, Jordan Neely was not armed. He was the mentally ill guy who did Michael Jackson impersonations. But to the right, Daniel Penny was a vigilante and a hero who saved the people from the aggressor on the subway. And when I saw that, I thought this has got to be fake. And as it turns out, Jordan Peele, I mentioned him before because he said that the George Floyd video inspired Nope. Well, Jordan Peele has the movie Get Out, which contains the theme of a white strangler killing. This is all just, again, life follows art. But it's all narrative building. So they have been setting this up for some time. And you can see how they're steering opinions. And it comes from the alt media, comes from the entertainment and the mainstream. Megert 4822 says racism only comes from movies anyway. Yeah, like that's a great point too. What we're seeing on the internet is not real life, but it does create this echo chamber effect, this tunnel vision to get you to believe that certain things are happening as televised. Defrag says, want to end racism, stop talking about it. Well, as far as it's an ideology that has been created, and it's a worldview thing. So, for example, the right wing is built on the idea that they need racial solidarity, white nationalism, because they're going to be exterminated. And that plays upon a number of fears. I talk about this split down the middle and how their attitudes down the line all align. There's a reason why right wing is closed borders, closed skin. So closed borders is to block foreigners, to maintain the purity of their group. It's about blood purity. Closed skin, anti-vax. So why are the anti-vax also anti-immigrant? It's all psychological ploy about borders and boundaries, the skin, the walls of the house being defended by the gun. Same reason why the right wing has been given Space Force from their leader, Trump. Space Force to protect them from the aliens. This is all just symbolism, but illegal aliens, extraterrestrials. There's a comparison here. Not a coincidence that in the last year, Tucker Carlson has really hyped up the idea, based on his friends in the Pentagon, that aliens are demons. So the right wing has been positioned to be opposed to illegal aliens and extraterrestrial aliens. Closed borders, closed skin. And of course, this all ties into the Second Amendment and the ability to defend these things. And this all ties in with nationalism. And again, blood purity being the theme. And then on the other side, the left is open borders, housing immigrants. They believe in aliens. In fact, they want the aliens to come down and take over. They're very pro-extraterrestrial as well. And they're super pro-vax. Well, why is this? It's about borders. It's about the porous boundaries, and it's about their relationship to power. So the left is embracing power at every level. They're state-olatrists. They worship the state. They worship Big Brother, and they want the one world government, globalism, which is the dissolution of national borders. Well, what does the alien invasion represent symbolically? If aliens invade, mankind unites as one. There's no longer a need for separation because now we're one race, human race, against the alien threat, like Ronald Reagan alluded to. How if only we had an alien threat, we would unite. Well, we will unite under the alien threat, one way or the other. Either fighting the aliens, which is one scenario, or the aliens come down and unite us all. But what I'm saying here is that the alien narrative and embracing the alien is actually about embracing the illegal alien, the foreigner, about dissolving borders, about one world. So the alien agenda is really just a metaphor for the evolution of nations into one big world. And that's why the right is opposed to globalism, because again, it's all about being insulated, about blood purity, etc. Okay, continuing. There's been a lot, speaking of aliens, there's a lot of UFO stuff, and I mean, we laugh at the UFO people, but the UFO psyop is massive. It's hugely funded, and it's way more popular than calling out media fakery. And yet all UFO footage is media fakery. There are people going to Congress, like the paper mache aliens. It's like they made an alien out of paper mache. They took it to the Mexican Congress and it goes viral. There are people sharing pictures that they say, oh, this is an airplane view of a flying saucer near the ground. No, it's not an aerial view. And it's just a picture of some kind of irrigation tank or something. But these things are going extremely viral. Joe Rogan entertains these people, talking about the aliens are here to stop us from using nukes. But my point is, there's no substance. There's no substance to any of the alien stuff, but it's heavily promoted. You can't get away from it. 1,000-foot UFO photographed near the Four Corners landmark, taken by a commercial pilot. So this is a big lie. And Joe Rogan entertains this guy. Congress entertains this guy. You look at a picture, Four Corners, New Mexico. It's where Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado meet. I haven't been there, but I'd like to go. You can be in 4 states at once. But near Four Corners, you have this picture. And this is, to, I guess, the casual observer, evidence of a flying saucer, because it looks like a flying saucer, and you can see the shadow beneath it, and it looks like it was taken from an airplane. And it's got to be 1,000 feet. Well, it turns out that no, this is not a photo from an airplane. The media didn't vet this. Nobody vets this. Joe Rogan didn't vet this. They run with this garbage. That is a patch of ground that is darker. It's part of this irrigation system. I can find more pictures of it that are even closer. But anyway, it's an optical illusion. That's not a shadow of a craft. These are both on the ground. These 2 patches. One is a white oval, one is black. Or darker in the photo. It's darker. His name is Louis Elizondo, counterintelligence officer, presents a fake UFO image to the public again in a congressional briefing. It gets debunked in less than 24 hours. He previously came under fire in a conference where he showed a UFO and said it was a mothership, and he had corroboration from pilots who spoke about this. But no pilots ever spoke to him. He made it up. The image was fake. And there was a falsified corroboration story to back it up. So this guy has a history of providing fake flying saucer evidence to Congress, and he's taken seriously. So here you can look at the image of the Four Corners, and you can actually find in Google Maps what he was interpreting as a flying saucer. And these are just features on the ground. So he's a fraud, But why are these frauds platformed? That would be my question. Why is it platformed? Because this is something that we're supposed to believe. This is something they want people to believe. They want, and this appeals to the right because they think the government's hiding something from them. It appeals to some on the left who want to believe in aliens. Okay, moving on. Dr. Allison Witt says, calling a black child a slur and becoming rich. This society is cooked. Here's the PSYOP trading card, by the way. PSYOP trading card, bifurcated PSYWAR, divided left and right. Left is the red, right is the blue. 1776 versus 1619. Trump versus Obama. This is just one of the keys to interpreting the news. These headlines are all incredulous. People are incredulous about it. A woman called a 5-year-old child a blank and is now raising money because people called her out. $200,000. Absolutely disgusting. No, it's well over 500,000 now. She beat Carmelo. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Okay, Grant Levick says, the optics around these repeated pareidolia faux pas do not bode well for advancing the conversation on UFOs. Exactly. Let me bring this up. There is no ufology. Now people call UFOs UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. But that's just because it sounds less ridiculous than UFO. But I don't think it's inclusive enough. What about subterranean aliens? What about beneath the ocean? I mean, if they're at the bottom of the ocean, you have something. What do you call that? It's not a UFO. It's not flying. But here we have a great comment here. Pareidolia faux pas. Why is this being promoted? It doesn't bode well for the conversation. Well, the conversation on UFOs is a joke. There is no ufology. There is no rigorous study. There's no evidence for any of it. There is, in fact, there are many examples we can prove of bad actors spreading lies for disinformation purposes. Look up Mirage Men. If you still think that ufology exists, that it's not just a superstition, you need to watch Mirage Men. The Air Force made this stuff up. This guy is not just a grifter getting paid to trick people, nor is he a credulous moron who falls for this stuff. He doesn't believe this stuff. There is no way he believes this. I couldn't have taken this picture and said, hey, can I go to Congress and share this with the world because it's evidence of extraterrestrial life? No, I wouldn't get the platform. This is platformed. Do you remember the alien that landed in Vegas? The backyard alien? That was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, there was a viral story about 8-foot aliens that landed in the backyard of some house in Las Vegas. And the police even said, yeah, there was a light reported coming down. Well, the person made this call, and the call went viral, where he's saying, there's an alien in the backyard. I'm looking at him right now. And I'm wondering, why are you on the phone with the police instead of recording the alien? Well, that story went viral for some reason. And I thought, why is this story even worth mentioning? There's no clues, no evidence. It's just this person's phone call. Well, later they claimed that Bibles were flying through the air and that a crucifix flew through the air and broke. So now they turned it to the alien's a demon. Well, 2 years later, the backyard alien family is back in the news in Vegas. And now they're saying that they encountered a demon and that they have had lingering poltergeist activity in their home ever since. And I'm bringing this up because aliens equals demons is another one of these storylines. Oh, X32, don't forget Belu. That's right. Was it Hollow Earthers? Who was that group? There was this group that in South America, they had this concept of the world as being flat or shaped like kind of like honestly, it was shaped like a toilet, but it was like this crater in this big, again, like this, it was what do we call that? We had a name for it. But anyway, the guy who came up with this idea, this model of the Earth, got previous notoriety for having seen this alien with red glowing eyes in a bush, and the alien's name was Bilu. Let me see if I can find him. Bilu the alien. Okay, I think I found it. Yes, Bilu, the Brazilian alien. And the 3D model of him. Yeah, Bilu, the Brazilian alien. Concept design. Yeah, we called it Toilet Bowl Earth, but what was their whole documentary? There was a group of astronomers, and they were, yeah, we should make him into a trading card. Bilu needs his own card. They were doing stellar observations, proving that the world was flat and had more land, but was also still orbiting the sun, and that it somehow wobbled. We have an actual picture of Bilu. So here is Bilu the alien. Oh no, his eyes were glowing green, not red. Different alien I was thinking of. But this is a picture of the alien that was hiding in the bush. This has always been a joke. And one more thing here. The so-called flat earthers have been unfairly criticized. Their intellects have been impugned. Their judgment has been called into question. Like, oh, it was concave earthers. Thank you, Mount Crushmore Bears. Mount Crushmore Bears says concave. They were concave Earth. So again, it means it's like a crater shape. But think about how for the last 7 or 8 years that we've been paying attention closely, anybody questioning NASA has been attacked as being misguided, unintelligent, uneducated, that we're stupid. There's something wrong with us because we don't trust the mainstream news on any level, especially when it comes to things that are above the Kármán line. But I would argue that we're arriving at our conclusions or asking these questions based on reason, sound logic. We're not jumping to conclusions. We're not believers. We're non-believers. So think about, this is a fundamental point here. We are non-believers because we have reasons. This is not the same as believing in aliens because of feelings, believing in aliens because of conditioning, believing in aliens because we want to, believe in something to make life more interesting. There's a qualitative difference between a believer that believes anything and a non-believer. The non-believer has the intellectual high ground if there's reasons behind it, and it's not reality denialism. So I think it's interesting that we've been watching for nearly 7 or 8 years, flat earthers being attacked nonstop, but the UFO believers get a pass. I'm sorry, but why do the UFO people get a pass? When do we get to call them the equivalent of what flat earthers meant to mean? Like, you guys are the credulous fools. You are the goofs. You are being trolled. You are unserious people. You're illogical, credulous dupes. You're cultists. But no, they never get that. No, they get to go speak at Congress. Let me go talk to Congress about the space station. Let me go on a speaking circuit. Let me get a History Channel special while I talk about media fakery. No, it'll never happen. But the people who believe anything, crop circles, must be from extraterrestrials, etc. The people who could be led to believe anything are given total platforms, and they're not even attacked for it. Like, where are the media attacks against the people who believe in flying saucers? They're not attacked. They're coddled. They are enabled. They're given a little nudge and a wink, like, yeah, you know something. Lord Laney says, I've never seen a floating ball with water attached to it, so I'm going to go ahead and assume it's not that. Well, their argument against that particular point would be their model has gravity, and it explains the water on the surface of the ball because the gravitational center of the Earth. But if you're not thinking with their model as a presupposition, it doesn't make sense. So you're correct in saying, I'm not going to go with this model because I haven't observed anything like this. But the people who believe the model first will interpret everything through that lens, so they won't get the point. And I've always been anti-model at this point. I don't have enough information. Like, if you see a headline, do you have enough information to know the story to be true? No, you don't. You don't just believe a story because the headline. And I think it's the same thing when you're given a total model, because nobody knows what is at the edge of the universe. The work of science is far from done. We don't have a complete picture, in my opinion. So I'm not going to operate under the presupposition that I do. And if they say, well, this is our model, look at the globe, this is our heliocentrism, believe this. I'm like, well, look, I'll believe what the evidence supports, and I'll concede the best explanatory model for what we observe, but I'm not going to go so far as to say I buy the whole big picture. I need more information. I will believe the big picture when you tell me what's at the edge of the universe. I think it's premature and a bit presumptuous to claim that we know everything. And I'm not going to accept false explanations or incomplete explanations, because what incomplete explanations do is they negate the need for curiosity. Oh, well, it's already known, or they're figuring it out, so we can just pay attention to what's on X. Let's just pay attention to the latest video game while they do the work of cosmography. That's not something I'm going to outsource. Cosmology. I'm going to outsource the higher truths, spirituality, and when those answers come, I'm sure I'll get them. Yeah, sure, you can be passive about your model of the world. Now, I do have, I guess you could say I have a schema, but it's not like a model based on shape. It's based on a perception, how it's perceived, how we experience it. I think that's far more relevant at this time. What difference does it make what the world is in terms of its shape or size if the person experiencing it is utterly brainwashed and don't know anything about the real world other than what they're spoon-fed, and they're given a curated worldview that blinkers them, blinds them, and has them caught up in race war propaganda? Like, I think we have more pertinent questions to answer right now. Kate Perry has been battered and bruised by the backlash. Well, I noticed the G-forces didn't even mess up her hair. It was a very comfy ride to space. But she says that the internet is a, quote, dumping ground for unhinged and unhealed. It's not just the internet, it's the world. The earth itself is likely a dumping ground for the unhinged and unhealed of the universe. Like, we're quarantined. The Galactic Federation is waiting for us to catch up. Or they've given up on us and they've just dumped us here. Like, I'm open to the idea that there's more continents on the earth, but that the people on the other continents want nothing to do with us. So the land that we have, that we think is the entirety of the world, is just where we're allowed to roam, like free-range chickens, where we can't damage the people who are living in the year 3000. Like, why? Like, have you seen The Village? If you haven't seen The Village, it's required watching. You can see it free on YouTube. It's about a commune where people grow up in this perfect world. But then later they find out, or some of them find out, that no, we're actually being lied to by the elders. We're in the 20th century, not the 18th century. There's a lot of technology we're missing out on, but we have been quarantined from the world to protect us from it. So it was like this benevolent dictatorship where they were mind controlled and they were told, if you leave the village, you will die. There's wicked people out there, monsters out there. And the elders would dress up like monsters to scare everybody into staying home. Sound familiar? Think about all the different psyops they use to scare people into staying in their little boxes. And that's what we're looking at with the village. So are we living in the village? Absolutely, we're living in the village. But is it literal? That's the only question. Like, yeah, we're mentally quarantined. We are mentally constrained, put in boxes by the elders who dress up like monsters to scare us. That's what psyops are. That's what the psyop entertainment complex is. But are we being literally quarantined against land and resources that they're going to reveal to us gradually under the guise of space travel and mining asteroids? Like, how else are they going to explain bringing in resources from space? And they're going to say they got it from an asteroid, but I'm saying they got it from the continent that they didn't put on your globe. That they lie about history. They lie in the daily news that becomes our fake history. Our history is bent. Our collective frame of reference is unreliable. It's built on lies, provably. But we can trust them on cartography. We can trust that they didn't hide any resources. Yeah, sure. Ashy Dog says The Village is slightly disturbing, but it's a good watch. It's also got Joaquin Phoenix, who's in another movie coming out soon. Probably a must-see. Someone had just sent me a link to it. Let me take a look. There's so much interesting content here on my minds.com feed. You have to go to minds.com/infinite plane society. Okay, it's called Eddington. Now, I haven't watched the trailer yet. Plain Decoded says, everyone check out the trailer to Eddington and listen to the background voice. It's a guy saying gematria is the practice of coding numbers into words, which is what Zach Hubbard always says. Eddington official trailer. And yeah, it's got Joaquin Phoenix. He says it's about COVID. And it's a mainstream movie with Joaquin Phoenix. Okay. Eddington. I'll take a look. Oh, speaking of Zach Hubbard and gematria. Let me see if I can find that. You know, we've been talking a lot about the various ways that truthers interpret the news and how they, like Zach Hubbard, for example. He does some great work in terms of noticing patterns and recognizing symbolism, but they always seem to default to the bad guys are doing stuff for real. And this is where you get stuff like revelation of the method. And I found this video here of, this is a very popular UFO guy. What is this UFO guy's name? And these guys are all such grifters. His name is, I think it's, what is this guy's name? I'm trying to pull him up. He says that we are watching the elite play by certain rules, that they foreshadow things in the news because they are adhering to the rules of karma. You know, this whole revelation of the method thing. And this is part of mystification of media. And I think Jameet, like, there is symbolism. You can look at it all around. You know, I'm not denying it's there. But the people who are always focusing on the symbol and the numbers and stuff are missing the point if they still these events. So here's somebody sharing Wilcock. So David here is claiming that the elite are playing by a certain set of rules where they have to tell us what they're going to do in the movies before they do it. So his argument here, and this is what truthers think, is that there's good forces in the universe that want to stop the bad guys. But if the bad guys show us what they're going to do to us in the movies, then the good guys can't stop them because we somehow, I guess, consented. Let me play that. You can hear it. I have to. One of these things with these. Here we go. these live streaming platforms, you have to constantly share and reshare the windows to get the audio to pick up. But yeah, these are the ancient alien clowns. But listen to what he says about this supposed rule in the universe where the bad guys can do bad things as long as they show us in fiction first. Now, I'm just bringing this up because this is ludicrous, but this is also orthodox. This is trutherism. Truthers believe this claptrap. And the only person pushing back against it is me. Find me another truther out there who is refuting revelation of the method. There aren't any.
To exist. Now, what do I mean by allowed to exist? I mean that they are aware that there are benevolent forces that will prevent them from achieving their goals unless we give them permission to enslave us. Ultimately, the universe is intelligent, alive, and conscious, and it is benevolent. It is a benevolent consciousness. That consciousness does not allow the negative to succeed unless it is invited. So
therefore, for example, 9/11 was allowed to happen because they showed us fictional events in movies. They showed us foreshadowing hints of what was to come. Therefore, the bad guys didn't get punished by God for killing 3,000 people. Now, that is nonsense. That makes no sense. It's total garbage thinking. But that's what truthers think. And until we push back, until the IPS think tank pushed back against that, nobody challenged it. InfoWars still pushes that. You believe this? InfoWars. Like, oh, the reason why the train crash in Palestine, Ohio looks like the Netflix movie is that they had to tell us they were going to crash the train so that they could dodge karmic retribution because the dark sorcerers know how to play by the rules. Like, isn't that just a little overcomplicated? Now, the refutation to that point is simply that every single major event that is foreshadowed by predictive programming has been fake. So explain to me why we would have to telegraph fake events. What is the purpose to it? The more likely explanation, the one that I propose here, is that predictive programming, concurrent programming, is just advertising. It's just propaganda. It's how you set the frame of reference for people to interpret what comes next. Yeah, Esteban, exactly. If you're going to do something bad, make a YouTube short to hint at it, and then you're in the clear. Well, it makes no sense. It's very new agey, but like it's also this form of alt spirituality. What religion promotes this? Is there a religion that promotes the idea that if you do bad things will happen to you unless you get permission to? There is no, it's not a religious thing. It's not Christian. It's not a Muslim thing. It's not a Jewish thing. No, it's a truther thing. It's an alt media simulation theory believing concept where there's this new notion of karma, and we're creating our reality through media manipulation, messing with our beliefs, and we're somehow consenting to it. It's very garbled. It really is. And nobody can spell it out. People will say, oh, it's revelation of the method. Well, whose method? They have to tell us. Well, who's they? That's one of their mantras. They have to tell us they're going to do it. And I go through Twitter feeds and I see this is the dominant perspective. If there's a 500 comment thread after a PSYOP about predictive programming, 99% of the people are going to say they have to tell us. But that's because they think the event is real. And again, predictive programming doesn't make sense in this context if the events are fake. Because what would be the karmic retribution for doing a poorly run PSYOP? Anyway, that's David Wilcox, known for aliens, I guess. I said here, bullcrap, predictive programming only ever precedes fake staged media events. but they call it the rules. Thomas Blitz, and I'm going through some Twitter comments on here. He says, you're submitting. Permission implies understanding. You're submitting. Someone else here says, we have to say very loudly that we do not consent. I used to see people commenting in all quotes, I do not consent to this. Here, oh, look, I called it. Dark Angel says, this is revelation of the method. I believe this is true. The only explanation is that some people are just evil and they serve a false god. Corbin Della says, it's predictive programming. They tell us what's going to happen, and we make it happen with our own minds because they have no power and they are immoral. So this is another thing. Simulation people believe this. And look, if you're a simulation theorist, you're not a simulation theorist. It's not a theory. So you have to figure that out. But the idea that we're causing stuff to happen with our minds is another trutherism. And this is a mind-bending thing. This is schizophrenia. This is an assault on cognition. What they have done is this. They have convinced people that what's happening on TV is the real world. And if what's happening on TV is glitchy, the real world is glitchy. If there's some kind of a strange alignment, an eerie coincidence between a terror attack and what just happened on TV, that's because the simulation glitched. No, it's not because what was on TV was propaganda to get you to accept what was in the news as real, to make it more palatable. They go with these off-the-wall explanations. But the simulation people believe that the TV is being used by the elite to get us to, quote, manifest their dark design. Oh, we saw it on TV, then it happened in the real world. We caused it to happen. So then they say, a lot of truthers will say, stop giving it your attention. Don't watch the TV. You're just manifesting for them. Now, that's magical thinking. And I knew a lot of people who used to, I talked to a lot of simulation people who believe this stuff back in Discord. And it was useful because it helped me understand their flaws. What is the flaw in their logic? Where someone said, oh, we're manifesting. The predictive programming is to get us to manifest the news. But then my counter to that is these events are all fake and staged. So are we manifesting a psyop? It doesn't make sense. It all falls apart when you subtract the assumed reality of the media events. I'm demystifying the truther interpretation of news. But I'm saying here that there's a reason for it. There's a reason why David Wilcox pushes revelation of the method. There's a reason why the UFO people get mainstream coverage 24/7. It's cognitive sabotage. Aliens, revelation of the method, manifest. Look, and one other point, because someone said, oh, if we all believe it, it happens. Oh, really? Explain to me the moon landing. I can point to 7+ billion people who believe man landed on the moon. We all saw the TV coverage of it. We all saw the pictures. We've all heard about it. We learned about it. Billions of people believe man landed on the moon. If belief creates reality, why are moon landings still fake? Defrag says, nobody wants to believe my infinite rendering theory. The world has no shape but loads as you continue to explore, like on Grand Theft Auto. Actually, Mark Sargent believes in the idea. He says, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, it doesn't make a sound because it didn't even render. Now, that's an interesting theory in itself, the idea that it renders as we go. And I think the truth might be somewhere between that and objective reality, that there is an objective reality as it's perceived in the now. It's not purely subjective, but in terms of co-creation, co-manifestation, is the world built around us? I'm definitely open to that. But I don't think it's as simple as if you believe. It's not magical thinking. Like you believe this, it's true. If you believe hard enough. No, I don't think it's necessarily like that. But I do think that there is a cybernetic system here that we can observe. but I'm trying to get into the, I guess, the fundamentals of it. Like, are we evolved apes with massive egos trying to cope with the meaninglessness of everything by imposing a meaningful structure into our lives? Or is there a meaningful structure to our lives? Is the universe built for us, or are we accidents, perhaps the lottery winners in evolution that we managed to get to this point? This is all luck. Estevan says, Sargent, if you're watching this, you are a big nerd. I don't think Mark Sargent watches Infinite Plane Society. He's too uninformed. He doesn't know about psyops. It's insane how he has been in this field for so long and he's still confused as normies are. I mean, Jeranism's confused. These individuals are all confused. Remember Witsit Gets It, or Witsit Spits It, as they call him? One of his assault charges had to do with spitting in the face of his spouse. Witsit Spits It, for example. Inconsistent character. A lot of these individuals are inconsistent to me because he can use logic and logical fallacies to explain his position quite well, but then he still promotes chemtrails. I'm like, wait, how can you identify 15 different logical fallacies in every McToon utterance, but then you believe in chemtrails? You can't believe in chemtrails without imbibing at least 7 or 8 different logical fallacies. You cannot. It's not a logical proposition. Norba LA says, if humans could survive radiation to the moon, Elon would personally be on the moon. Well, let me bring that up. One of the biggest guardrails right now is the Van Allen radiation belt. Oh, they had to fake the moon landing because the Van Allen radiation belt. The radiation would kill us. We can't go to the moon manned. Oh, but we can go to the moon with robots, with probes, maybe in the future. No. We can't even go to the moon because space travel's a hoax. Candace Owens and Bart Sabrell were talking about this. Oh, the moon landing was fake because the Van Allen radiation belt. But that still leaves open the possibility that space travel's real. It assumes that satellites are real and that the ISS is real. No, the UK did not admit they do chemtrails. Let me clarify that. That's a truth. That's going around Trutherville right now. One, chemtrails do not exist. That is a fact. That may not sit well with you, but there's no such thing as chemtrails. Chemtrails, 100% of them are misidentified condensation trails. Just like 100% of the drones over New Jersey in January were airplanes. That's 100%. UK did not admit they do chemtrails. That is a misrepresentation of what really went down. And I knew the story when I saw the first meme. I was like, okay, they're falling for this again, because this is like the 20th time I've seen this phenomenon. Here's what happens. There will be a leak or an admission, and the truthers run with it. Oh, we're vindicated. Chemtrails exist. Hooray. And they all celebrate. They run in the streets. They jump. They look up at the sky, and they're like, thank you, chemtrail God. You're real. No, this is not a cause to celebrate. This is not a win for chemtrail boofers. Chemtrails do not exist. What happened in the UK is this. They want to do geoengineering to stop climate change. So let's go ahead and just go back and read this quick point. The chemtrail cult still doesn't get it. The buzzword trap. So the buzzword trap is what you got caught with here. Words have meaning. We have to adhere to those meanings or we get lost. So for years now, a vocal subset of conspiracy theorists, I call them the chemtrail cultists, have been clinging to the idea that secret weather manipulation programs are happening over their heads. Do you believe in secret weather manipulation programs? Do you believe that man can alter the climate? Let's start there. That's a yes or a no. Do you believe that man alters the climate? If so, you believe in climate change. I don't. I have no reason to. Truthers say, oh, climate change is ridiculous. I'm not like Greta, but they believe in geoengineering. They say, but they are affecting the weather. It's called geoengineering. No, geoengineering is a buzzword. And you don't know what it means. And the people who say geoengineering, cloud seeding, don't know what cloud seeding means. But my geoengineering, define it for me, please. You can't. I can define it for you. Geoengineering is specifically a term used by climate scientists. It's proposed and largely hypothetical measures to stop climate change. Like, let's say, because of climate change, the earth gets really, really hot. What are we going to do? Maybe we can block the sun. You know, like umbrellas. You know, you have to do something in your immediate environment to protect yourself. What do we do if the global climate gets so bad that we can't live here? Well, we have to mitigate climate change. Mitigation measures are called geoengineering. So geoengineering isn't a secret weather manipulation program. Geoengineering is a proposed set of ideas to stop climate change. So again, it's never referred to chemical spraying, ever. And it's not a secret term. Geoengineering is not a secret. It's not classified. It's a quote, again, here's the key term, hypothetical. Geoengineering is a hypothetical set of climate intervention strategies that have been kicked around in academic and policy circles. These are not even things that they can do for real. Like Bill Gates, yeah, maybe I can block the sun if it gets too hot. And then the truthers are like, Bill Gates is going to block the sun tomorrow. Stratospheric aerosol injections. We're all going to die. No, this is an idea they've kicked around if climate change gets too bad. But every time you say they're using geoengineering, do you know what you're really saying? You're saying, I believe in climate change, but I don't like the proposed solutions. So you're ceding the argument, you're accepting the premise, and then you're rejecting their solution. This is a structured argument. This is mind control. This is the same structure as the anti-vax argument. The anti-vaxxers will say, I don't trust the cure. I believe in the pandemic, but I don't trust the cure. That's truthers. Truthers believe that people are dying, but they don't trust the cure. Truthers believe the weather's changing, but they don't trust the cure, geoengineering. So geoengineering and the vaccine are solutions to collective problems, the pandemic and climate change. And so there's a bifurcated response to these things that gives it away as a hoax. And I just pointed this out. 100% of chemtrail cultists are anti-vaxxers for the same reason. It's because you've been goaded, you've been led to this. 100% of climate change activists are pro-vaxxers. This is a line that is ideological and not scientific. Geoengineering is a buzzword. So the right's like, oh, they're doing geoengineering. Sorry, geoengineering doesn't exist. Chemtrails don't exist. And again, if you believe in chemtrails, you haven't done your homework. You have no business even promoting it unless you're a propagandist, unless you're willing to be called a hysteric liar, because you don't have a model. You have no business promoting the idea of chemtrails until you can predict them, because contrails are predictable. Chemtrails, UFOs are run by the same PSYOP department. I would argue that chemtrail and UFOology are both run by the same department, and it's intended to bewilder the far right, just like climate change bewilders the left. You know, these are major parts of your world concept. So again, the UK did not admit to chemtrails. Chemtrails don't exist. Truthers are their own worst enemy. Like, you have these truthers who get some bill passed in Tennessee to block chemtrails. It's like you could pass a bill to ban Sasquatch from public parks. Does that make Sasquatch real? Hey guys, look, there's a bill here. They're banning Sasquatch from public parks, therefore Sasquatch is real. Look, here's a bill, a proposed bill to block chemtrails so Bill Gates doesn't block the sun. Therefore, Bill Gates has the power to block the sun, and it's not just a hypothetical measure to stop a hypothetical problem. So anyway, if you say chemtrails, you're just being foolish. And, you know, I'm not trying to be mean about it when I say that people are cultists. I'm just accurately describing them. Would you agree with me that UFO belief is a cult? Yes, you would. It's not based on science. It's not based on evidence. It's based on a desire to believe. It's a cult. Chemtrail is also a cult. Now, why would you want to believe in chemtrails? Because you want to be right. You don't want to think, oh, I'm inhaling all these terrible chemicals. Of course, nobody would really want that. But you don't want to be proven wrong, I guess. I guess it's an ego thing. In fact, I have a quote here. One of the chemtrail people actually sent me a message, and he said he got a blood test. Here it is. So, Jerry, now this is a chemtrail cultist, okay? And you'll notice chemtrail cultists never go after the airports. They never go to the airlines. They never talk to pilots. They never talk to engineers. They never look at jet engines up close. They never do their research. They never take my advice and look up the Appleman chart about the predictability of contrails. No, they stick to their bullshit. So Jerry says to me, Tim, you are full of it. Go check your family's blood. Check your own. Get a metals test. You have heavy metals in the blood, high concentrations of lead, aluminum, and barium. Should not be there. There have been tests on squirrels and deer blood. These elements are coming from the air. I'm not a cultist. I have a powerful dark field microscope. There are nanobot constructions, and they're in our blood. Belief is for the church. Look at your blood and you will see. I cleared our blood with Chelaton 4 treatments, and you can clear yours. But that's the first step. You have to become curious enough to check. You know, I had another chemtrail cultist tell me, too, that we detox. She said I was brain damaged for not believing it, and that she detoxes for chemtrails. So his first point here was to call me out as being full of it, and then said it's in my blood. Okay. Oh, now listen to this. This is from Give Send Go. At Give Send Go, we disabled the comments on the campaigns for Carmelo, Anthony, and Shiloh Hendricks. So Give Send Go has removed the comments on both because of what's happening. It says, due to the high volume of racist and derogatory remarks, the comments are turned off. Each campaign has raised $500,000. Each campaign has 15,000 donors. We are committed to ensuring the funds are delivered to the recipients as intended, but we condemn the hateful comments and the division it fuels with these harmful narratives. This does not reflect Give Send Go's values. Absolutely it does. Give Send Go has been funding PSYOPs for a long time. Same with GoFundMe. They are there as part of the PSYOP. They're actually a huge part of it. This story wouldn't exist without Give Send Go. If it wasn't for Give Send Go, nobody would be talking about Austin Metclaf or Shiloh Hendricks. And they banned the comments days after, so it's already too late. John Francis says, a friend of mine often is on a heavy metal detox. She's always sick as a dog during the detox. It's a religious thing, like a cult thing. Like cults are always purifying themselves, fasting for spiritual purposes, detoxing from the world. And I think the religious impulse, like if you look at the various religions, they might have different gods, different ceremonies, but their structures are very much the same. My research into magical traditions has also borne this out, that there's a similar structure to different magical traditions. The idea of the witch, the magician, the sorcerer, and the worldview that suggests that man has some kind of agency, that has ability to command nature through the spoken word. Like these have parallels in different traditions. And I think that caters to a structure that we all share. And I think religions are all built around this shared psychological structure and how we all spiritualize things in similar ways. And many religions are built around the idea that the world itself is a fallen, wicked, sinful, dirty place, and you have to purify yourself by becoming less of the world, retreat from the world, go to the mountaintop, refuse the sin, refuse the worldly life. So part of many religions is this concept of purification, separating yourself. And I think that the truthers are in a religion. And for them, detoxing is part of, I think, this impulse, this religious impulse. And it's being tapped into. And that's why it's likely that these, like UFOs, for example, are so heavily promoted. Because it's part of a religious paradigm. Hey, they may not believe in the traditional concepts of angels and messengers from heaven, but they believe in aliens from space. What's the difference? Same structure. And one other point too, religion is an ancient form of mind control where the priesthood are the myth makers. They tell the stories. This is the backstory. This is where we came from. We were made 6,000 years ago, or we were made with the Big Bang billions of years ago. The myth makers give you the story that puts your life into a context. And religions tell the story. This is our far past, this is the present, and this is how things will be in the future. So it's a big story, a series of religions are a collection of stories that we live within. And the priesthood creates the stories, and then the rulers are able to rule over the people because they believe these stories. A good example of this, the priesthood says that mankind is overusing natural resources and the world's going to end because of it. So the priesthood tells this story, and the rulers come out and say, because you guys are ruining the world, we're going to have to regulate you and tax you and restrict you in these certain ways. We're going to rule over you, and you're going to pay us for it. You see how that works? And what I would suggest here is that the priesthood today is the media, and it serves the government. And the priesthood's job is to give the masses the myths in which they will live and exist. And then the rulers can rule over the people because of the way that they are mentally configured. Oh, they believe the world's going to end? We can do this. They believe that this is a likely scenario, or they believe in this weapon of mass destruction. We can do this. So I would say that the modern myth makers of media are a priesthood, that media is religion, and it serves the role of softening up the minds of the masses for the benefit of the government to rule over us. We have to be made rulable to be ruled. And a big part of what makes us rulable is our shared belief in the big lies, namely history. And history is a huge lie. It's not an oversimplification. If fake news exists and it's the dominant narrative of the day, every fake news story becomes it steers our history, our collective background. If you look at the screen, I have a drawing that I did. I was just sitting in my truck. I drew a face in a cube, and then I put a hole in front of the face on the cube surface, and I labeled that ego aperture. And I put id behind him, some Freudian terms. And then outside the box, I labeled various things within the box. And then outside the box, I put information field, higher self, real I. I labeled the ego as fake I, or false I, false self. And then it says here, this is a theoretical model of the mind inclusive of a transcendent higher self, not bound by the temporal space-time cube. And then outside of it, it says eternal. So anyway, this looks like chicken scratch, but I put this together because I was just trying to describe my theory about synchronicity and also the self. I have this notion now that synchronicity, that the meaningfulness we experience in life, that messages that you get from outside, external things in your environment, that it's not the universe talking to you, that it's not God or a higher power, but that it's something else entirely. And to describe this, I had to create this diagram, which I was working on yesterday. So I have this graphic in a rough sketch, and I want to put it together in a clearer form so people can understand what I'm saying. Because what I'm pointing out here is that our sense of self, our ego, is largely interpreted through the lens of the flesh, the senses, and our time-space constraints. But if we include in our concept of self our intuition, which is seemingly not in the box, then we have an expanded sense of what the self is, which is why I label here the ego as the false self. So I'm trying to decompartmentalize the soul and into its parts. So you've got the part that is incarnated and the part that is non-corporeal, non-embodied, which has a different set of information that it has access to. So we you have like your inner dialogue where you are conversing with yourself more or less and the subconscious contents of your mind. There's like a dialogue. And what I'm suggesting is that just as we have an inner dialogue and we communicate with our subconscious, the egoless part of ourself, the id, the mass of content there, I also think that synchronicity represents what I would term an outer dialogue. And that synchronicity can be explained in this context, that it is a dialogue, not with a higher power, but with oneself. So to explain this, again, I'm putting it into a diagram, and I took a picture of it, and I gave it to Grok. And I said, Grok, interpret this, and listen to what Grok said. And this is just an example of how I use AI for different things. It says, the diagram suggests a layered model of the self. The higher self is the transcendent, all-knowing aspect of the soul, free from physical constraints and connected to the infinite information field. The ego operates in the present, serving as a limited viewfinder that perceives the material world through the senses, which filter out the broader information field. The lower self, id, trapped in the subconscious, is tied to the past experiences and primal instinct, and it's unable to access the present or future directly. The imagination is a key interface that allows the mind to tap into the higher self and glimpse the future or unmanifested possibilities. The material world, cube, is a prison of time-space where the soul becomes incarnated and experiences through the filtered senses. This model seems to be a blend of Freudian psychology with metaphysical ideas proposing that the soul is decompartmentalized when it transcends the material cube and reconnects to a full spectrum of existence, uniting past, present, future. So that was Grok looking at my diagram here. It's very crude, and extrapolating all that information from it and accurately repeating to me what I was trying to convey, but in a much clearer form. Norbu says, AI gets me more than people. Well, it's a great tool for consolidating large swaths of information and making complex ideas simple. It's great for taking the simple and making it complex. I've been working with different applications and testing things out. And so recently I've been thinking about, infographics and how I can use this to create various infographics. And one of the infographics I've been working on, in fact, I think I put it on a poster, is this diagram of the incarnated soul that is also, again, inclusive of that part which isn't incarnated or filtered through the senses, because I think that's where synchronicity can be explained, what I term the outer dialogue. It's a longer conversation, but I've been working on a book. It's about 150 pages. It's not really all that dense, but it's mostly a lot of anecdotes. But what I'm trying to explain here in this book, which I'm not going to give the title out now, but I'm trying to explain what I think causes synchronicity, because I don't think synchronicity needs to be overly mystified. I mean, I understand the idea is intrinsically somewhat mystical, but mystical implies mind blown, I don't understand. And I think it's something that could be brought into the purview of rational discourse outside of paranormal and unexplained. But I'll be letting you know about that here very soon. It's just a project I've been working on. And so the graphic here, the final version will be in the book. And I could be wrong about it. And one of the reasons why I'm publishing this content is I want to challenge people to examine my take on things and prove me wrong, or perhaps add to it. Maybe it will resonate with many of you, because I don't think it's insignificant. And way before I ever came across the idea that NASA was a worldview shaping mechanism that is intrinsically built on lies, I was already at the point of questioning worldview. How did I come to arrive at this? Because what flies in the face of the dominant paradigm on every level is the sense of meaning. This isn't supposed to mean anything if you're going strictly by the science books. Meaning is the result of ego, apophenia, mental illness, because we're just a bunch of apes. Nothing is supposed to be around us, built around us. The world's not supposed to be responsive to the human will. We're not supposed to look at this as a cybernetic system. But the existence of synchronicity flies in the face of our usual concepts of cause and effect. And I think it was one of the big wake-up calls for me, was when I started to take the idea a little more seriously. I was like, wait, this isn't just misfiring of the brain's not just misinterpreting things. It's not just cognitive bias. It can't be reduced to self-fulfilling prophecy. But at the same time, I'm not going to say it's God. And one of the points in the book here, and one of the things that I think I've had to really oppose here, is this constant tendency to reflexively externalize everything. Like, I had to deal with this before. When I first started writing this thing, I was in a think tank talking about it, and a lot of simulation people are saying, well, it's the simulation. It's the AI. I had somebody try to tell me that artificial intelligence was behind the synchronicities in my life. That it's a higher power, it's a computer, but they all agreed it's external to you. I'm like, why? Why is there this reflexive tendency to attribute these things to something outside? Sort of like how people look at predictive programming, and it must be caused by a higher power. Man couldn't do it. So I think there's a tendency to put up a guardrail against what I think is a very important and key revelation here about human agency. But we'll get to that. Dr. Back Asward says, curious, Tim, if you ever considered how this began, life as we know it. Well, I will say that I don't believe in any of the official explanations. And that's all I can know. I don't have enough information to have a complete model, but rather than sticking to somebody else's best guess, or rather than going with a popular explanation, I'm just going to have no explanation. Agnosticism. Same thing with media. I think that if you don't know something, you should stand on that. I don't know. I don't believe. I think you should stand on your disbelief as a position of reason and logic. Like, it makes more sense to not believe unless I have more information. And just because you don't have an answer doesn't mean you're not a seeker. It means that you just have to wait. You have to be patient. The idea that there are answers in any of these holy books, I think, is kind of misleading. It's like gatekeeping in a way. I look at religion at large as controlled opposition to the truth. Media is controlled opposition to the truth. It's giving you a selective worldview. And I don't think religions are separate. I think that media is just the newest iteration of religion. And I separate religion from spirituality. However, alt spirituality has also become something of a religion, especially in conspiracy theorist circles, where it's either self-styled Christians who don't go to church, or it's people who believe in an AI God, which was endorsed by Elon Musk. And I'm trying to move away from the presumption that any spiritual phenomenon must be externalized. I think we might be misinterpreting something within. So yes, controlled opposition to what? Controlled opposition to understanding the full spectrum of the self. Because one thing that you can say about the dominant paradigm, the one that has us as evolved apes that are just confused into thinking that we mean more and that we matter more, So that paradigm reduces us to, that is our consciousness, our awareness, our being, is simply a byproduct of the meat suit. That our body is the extent of us, and that our mind is mostly delusion, and it's just it's just a tool to keep us alive. But our perception is mostly just an accident that's unnecessary. The ego is desperate to validate itself, but it intrinsically life is meaningless. Like, that is scientifically defensible. It is scientifically defensible to say life has no meaning. Human life has no value. That you don't have a soul. You can't show me your soul in the laboratory. You can't. And I'm suggesting here that the one of the biggest secrets might actually be the existence of the transcendent self and what this place really is. But okay, as far as religions go, there is a popular religion that's not around anymore. It was supposedly a world religion, the Manichaeanism. And this is all based on the idea of a duality. And I do think there is plenty to support the idea that there is a war between souls and the opposite. In other words, incarnated beings, in my view here, are light, moving to this realm of darkness. And I think there are just as many beings here that do not have souls, that do not originate from outside, but are rather truly of this system. And there is this struggle to get the light to forget its origin, is what I think. So spiritual warfare, I think, is a thing. I do believe in absolute evil. And I think this place was built for humans. I do think that this entire universe is alive. I lean towards panpsychism, but beyond that, I don't really know. I will say for sure, though, that the religions are wrong, that they provide incomplete models. And back to my conversation about models, we don't have enough information to have a complete model. This also pertains to religions. So if you have to rely on faith to fill in the gaps, then you're going into this realm of non-thinking, of your mind's not good enough to grasp reality, so you're just going to take it on faith. Yeah, that's how people are with media. Norbu says, souls are subjectivity itself. Science only deals with objectivity. Well, that's what we're told. That's what we're supposed to believe. But what if I could provide for you evidence of non-corporeal continuity of existence post-death? Or what if I could provide evidence of agency where man's thoughts and intentions do, in fact, have bearing on the order of events and what actually happens after? You know, we look at the past, present, future as a trajectory, a line, like you're on a road driving. You look back, there's the past. You're in the car, that's the now, that's the present. So you just assume, well, the future is a road in front of me that's much like the road behind me. But the future doesn't exist, is what I'm saying. I mean, the past existed, but the now is all that exists. The future isn't a physical place that we're going to. It's not a road that's already been paved. My contention here is that what we think of as the future is nothing but information. And that this information condenses into the material through the medium of consciousness, that we are perceiving it as it comes into existence, that perception and experience are intrinsically tied, and that in a sense, yeah, the now is objectively real, that our world isn't fake, it's not a simulation, but the future is more malleable than we would think, and that it only seems to be predictable because we're creatures of habit, but that there are quite literally infinite possibilities, and there are things that are more probable than others. But what determines what comes next is not an accident of nature, but I think that human will plays a great part in it, but it's not the entirety of it. And it's not as simple as belief creates reality. These are the errors in thinking. People think, well, if thoughts influence reality, then our beliefs create reality. Not the same thing. Not quite the same thing. It's a bit more nuanced. And that's why I put this book together that I alluded to. I want to explain how I think it works based on my own anecdotal experiences, and I'll see what people think. Esteban says, not to mention it's a book that's handed to you by people in charge. Yeah, okay, Bible, Quran, any other holy book or philosophy, these are just models, and they're very subjective, and they cater to the needs of the power elite. The myth makers, the priesthood, write the stories to make the people rulable by the rulers. Like, I think we need to stop treating religion as sacrosanct. It's no more sacred than media. And you notice how they almost want to turn criticism of media into a form of blasphemy. Oh, you don't believe. How dare you? Or you're questioning the story. You're a heretic. Conspiracy theorists are basically heretics. No, we're not. We're correct. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, to be clear. That term is kind of just vague. But we have identified the real... Okay, there is a conspiracy. One of the main conspiracies out there right now, the most prolific conspiracy theory out there in the world right now is the idea that there's all these conspiracies. Because 99% of the conspiracies are fake. But there's a conspiracy to spread the conspiracies. That's true. And what we're looking at is that. We're looking at the meta conspiracy. So there's a conspiracy to convince people that all these conspiracy theories are true. But these are all false. And these are all just alternative ways of looking at the mainstream news. So yes, conspiracy theories are the big conspiracy. And if there is any conspiracy worth exposing, it's media fakery and worldview warfare. And conspiracy theories play a huge role in this. But the term hardly means anything because the mainstream believes things that are rightfully considered also conspiracy theories. Although now they don't call you a conspiracy theorist because it makes it sound like you think, oh, he's got a theory. No, you're a conspiracist, as in a conspiracist. And that was a clever move on behalf of the PSYOP entertainment complex to demonize its critics. Giant says, every Christian believes something different. I consider myself a Christian, but do not agree with anyone else I've met in person or online. Yeah, one thing I've learned in the last few years is that there's no monolith. Like, I used to be critical of Christianity, but I'm really not anymore because there isn't Christianity. I don't believe that there is one. There's a billion Christianities. Christianity is a plural. It's become so generic that it's not even a religion. It's arbitrary, it's generic, it's one size fits all, nothing to fight over. Everybody's a Christian, so nobody's a Christian. It doesn't mean anything to me at this point. I'm more interested in individual perspectives than what a collective believes. Norbert says, every day there are huge explosions and death. They can't all be fake. Well, here, let me counter that. They can't all be real. Like, all the news can't be real. No, it can't be. All the news can't be fake. No, it can't be. But nobody's saying it's all fake. Everybody is saying it's all real. Think about it. The dominant majority of the people out there, news consumers, believe that all the news is real. That's fallacious. Auto belief is fallacious. Auto hoaxing it, saying it's all fake until proven real, is not fallacious, because we're not saying it's all fake. We're saying questionable stories are questionable and need to be examined in case they're fake. So the only person saying that everything is real is the normie, who don't question anything. The only people who are just passively accepting it. But nobody is saying everything's fake. Auto hoaxers are the only ones who are applying nuance to it. Now, there is this truther bias where everything mainstream is fake, and mainstream has a bias. Everything truther is fake. But thinking in terms of all, generalizing when it comes to information consumption, it's not something I do. Generalizing is very passive. It takes an active frame of mind to go for the nuance. To be passive and accepting of these generalizations requires no thought at all. And what we're doing is very thoughtful. This is a thoughtful analysis of fake news. All right, this is Chief Crow Auto Hoax. We'll continue this conversation possibly later today, but I'm trying not to skip any more days, even if it means I have to come in at strange times, which is why it's all the more important to be subscribed at IPS.monster so you don't miss the live stream notifications. Anyway, thanks for joining. This is Chief Crow.
I'm on auto hoax and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time, baby, for another crisis actor with soulless eyes. My buddy, and me. Telecommunications Act of 1996. 96, y'all. Gonna filter your eyes and